Hi, this is Teddy, and today you're listening to Elena Hung from Little Lobbyists on Two Broads Talking Politics.
Are you listening?
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I am thrilled to be joined today by a returning guest, Elena Hung, who is the executive director and co-founder of Little Lobbyists. So, hi, Elena.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Last time we connected was, I think, 3 years ago, a very long time ago at this point. So it's been a while. Just to sort of frame the conversation for people who aren't familiar with Little Lobbyists, if you could tell us just a little bit about your background and starting Little Lobbyists.
Sure. 3 years ago. I think it was 3 lifetimes ago now. It feels like, right? So I'm a mom, and 6 years ago, I had a great pregnancy, an amazing birth. And then about 15 minutes after my baby was born, she was placed on 100% oxygen and rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit, where she remained for the next 5 months of her life. She was diagnosed with serious medical conditions affecting her airway, lungs, heart, and kidneys. I named my baby Xiomara, which means ready for battle. And she is definitely that. She's the joy of my life. And I'm so lucky that I get to be her mom. So Xiomara uses a tracheostomy to breathe, and a ventilator for additional respiratory support, a feeding tube for all of her nutrition, and a wheelchair to get around and explore the world around her. And, I'm thrilled to tell you that Xiomara is thriving today. She's doing really well. She's a happy, kind, funny, clever, little naughty little girl. And, needless to say, our access to healthcare, to affordable quality healthcare, made a huge difference. And it's the reason that she survived and is thriving. And in 2017, when we saw the Republican efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act and cut Medicaid, is when I began my journey into advocacy, what I now call, when I became an accidental healthcare activist. I was watching the news along with everyone else shortly after inauguration, and like most of the families that I knew, we were worried and scared and angry, and felt like we needed to do something. So we decided to show up on Capitol Hill one day. Like, literally, that was our plan. Just show up. I live in Maryland. I'm a 30-minute train ride to Capitol Hill. And I thought, I'm not seeing my story being told. I'm not seeing kids like Xiomara on the news and telling the world, telling the country what the ACA means, what the Affordable Care Act means, what Medicaid means to someone like her. And so I got my friends together and we showed up. And that's, did not intend to start an organization, but it was very much needed, I think. And from there, we just kept showing up. More and more families joined us across the country, not just on Capitol Hill, but meeting with their elected officials in home offices and telling their stories, helping put a face on these issues, on these policies, letting their elected officials know how their votes on healthcare would affect their families. So that was 2017 in a nutshell. 2018 came, and it was a midterm election year. And we, at that point, had learned enough that we can be the greatest advocates that we could. We could tell our stories in the most effective ways. But if people are not listening, if elected officials are not listening to us, are not willing to meet with us and do their job and do right by our children, then it was our job to vote them out of office and elect those who will fight for our children. And so we got into the election fight. We continue to we team up with other organizations like Healthcare Voter and Protector Care, continue to tell our stories and help turn out the vote in 2018 and took back the House. So that was very exciting. And now we're 2020, so there's an election coming up. I don't know if you heard.
I may have heard something about that, yeah.
We're still here.
Yeah, so once the House was flipped in 2018, Republicans could no longer try to strike down the ACA through legislation. So now they are trying to do it through the courts and taking the battle to the Supreme Court. And shortly after the election, there will be a hearing on the ACA in the Supreme Court. So that was already a huge battle that was coming. But now with the nomination of a new justice, that becomes an even bigger deal. Can you tell me a little bit about, what you have seen in this confirmation hearing or the coverage about it so far, what that tells you about, what we might be looking at in terms of this Supreme Court fight for the ACA?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the ACA case you mentioned is coming up in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? In 1 month from now, right after the election. So it's the Republicans in the Senate are rushing this through, and it's no coincidence. This timing is no coincidence. Also, no coincidence is the fact that President Trump made it very clear that the nominee that he was going to put forward would be someone that would overturn the Affordable Care Act. Also, no secret is that the nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, has also made public statements that are hostile to the Affordable Care Act. So let's connect the dots here. This is not, we're not speculating. This is all public record. There is a nominee that has been rushed through this process who will very likely, if confirmed, will very likely be the deciding vote on the Affordable Care Act and overturning it. And so allow me to speak a moment about what that means, what the Affordable Care Act means. We all know, we've heard the stories, but at the core of it, the Affordable Care Act is the law that right now provides healthcare protections to those with pre-existing conditions. And what that means is that anybody with a pre-existing condition cannot be discriminated against. Health insurance companies cannot charge them a higher premiums. And that's just one of the biggest things that the Affordable Care Act offers. It also defined the 10 categories of the essential health benefits. So it means that it allows for fewer people. This is important because it allows for fewer people who are covered by junk plans, which offers very few protections. And the biggest thing for me personally is that the ACA banned annual and lifetime caps. So not many people know that before the ACA, many insurers could limit how much they can cover of a person's, healthcare costs. And let me make that extra personal because this is the reason that I started Little Lobbyists. My daughter spent the first 5 months of her life in the neonatal intensive care unit, as I mentioned. The cost of that stay for 5 months was over $3 million. And that's what she was, what was billed, what insurance paid out. Had she been born before the ACA, had we been one of the, 60% of people who received our health insurance through our employer that had coverage with lifetime limits, that meant that Xiomara would have lost her insurance before she even came home, that she would have been uninsurable at 5 months old. And there's so many children like her. By definition, all of the Little Lobbyist children have pre-existing conditions, either born with or later acquired pre-existing conditions. Many of them have lifelong chronic illnesses or chronic issues that will require care for the rest of their lives, that will easily put them very close to or over the top of a lifetime limit. So if the Affordable Care Act is overturned, all those protections are gone. They're gone. And kids like mine, little lobbyists, children would not have that coverage anymore. The other thing that the ACA did was expand Medicaid, allowing for more than 12 million people, low income, to gain coverage. And, again, not many people know that you can have excellent health insurance like we do, and it still doesn't cover everything that you need. So Medicaid is, Xiomara's on Medicaid, and it helps pay for the therapies that insurance doesn't. It pays for physical therapy. It pays for her occupational therapy, her speech therapy, her feeding therapy, as well as the home nursing care that helps supports her independence and her ability to live at home and in the community. So Medicaid really can literally be the difference between life and death for so many families. And I would say, especially for Black and Brown and Indigenous Americans who are right now being disproportionately impacted during this pandemic. So, when we talk about what this ACA case means before the Supreme Court and what this nominee means, I want people to understand specifically what overturning the ACA means. It means all of these protections are gone. It means that children like mine, children with pre-existing conditions, children with complex medical needs and disabilities, Americans all across the United States with pre-existing conditions are at risk of losing their healthcare coverage. And it's just been so crystal clear that the reason that this nominee has been put forward is to overturn the Affordable Care Act. This administration has no backup plan. They're all about repeal, repeal, repeal. There's been no replacement plan that offers the same exact protections that we need. And so it's very serious. I would say that a vote for this nominee is a vote to take away our health care. And we're doing everything we can to speak up and speak out against it. We're calling on all our friends and family to not just vote on November 3rd or before November 3rd, vote early, but also to call their senators and to, ask them to vote no on this nominee. There's just so much at stake, and I just cannot stress that enough.
Are there senators that you think are ones that everyone should just focus on their own senator? Is there any sort of strategy that we might use to try to block this nominee from being confirmed or change anything about the way the case might be decided?
So generally speaking, the advocacy rule is always call your own members of Congress, call your own senators. Don't go on and call somebody else. So they do keep track of that. So yes, call your own senator. And if your senators are already voting no, go ahead and call all your friends and families to call their senators, right? This is how relational advocacy works. We want to mobilize everybody. We're trying to get out the vote. They're rushing this through, and it's a sham. It really is. It's frustrating. And, I feel like I don't, try not to lose hope, but the most we can do is just continue to raise our voices, continue to make our voice heard, and reach as many people as we can to call their senators to have them do their job and represent us.
Has the type of advocacy you're able to do changed in this pandemic? I assume that it's changed your ability to go to Capitol Hill to do those sorts of in-person advocacy events.
Yeah. So there's two parts to it. One, with Little Lobbyists, so much of what we did was so visible, and it was really, at the core of what we did is to have representation of our children, to let people know that disabled children can lead happy and joyful lives. And that was something that was really important to me. Before Xiomara was born, I had never seen a child like her that was presented either in the media or anywhere really as just a kid. Everything's presented in such medical terms, So it made me really happy to have this platform where I was able to bring children to Capitol Hill to let everybody see that the policies being made do affect these children, and that they were just children, happy, joyful children who benefit and have such great potential if they are given the proper supports and services. So it's been, it's kind of weird to say, like, I miss going to Capitol Hill. I miss the rallies. I miss showing up and seeing our friends. A lot of our kids saw that as sort of this really informal play dates. So that's been hard. But the flip side of it is that families like ours are so creative and are used to, finding ways to make our voices heard. When the pandemic started and everyone's talking about, washing hands and home isolation, we looked at ourselves, we were like, well, we were doing that before it was cool. I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but our families like ours, we've spent more than our fair share of time in the hospitals and in our homes to keep our children safe, to keep, supplies in our living space sterile or as sterile as possible. So we are in a way used to this life that the pandemic forced upon us, which also means we've been creative in how we connect with one another, how we make our voices heard over the phone and over the computer and finding social networks. So we've been tapping into the same exact resources and those networks to engage in our advocacy as well. A lot of our events where we would have shown up in person to do press conferences or rallies, we're doing over Zoom. Our kids are very tech savvy, I'll tell you that.
So you and Little Lobbyists have endorsed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I wonder if you could just speak a little bit about what you see in them that made you endorse them and what you're hopeful about with their administration.
Absolutely. I'll confess right now and say Joe Biden was not my first choice or my second, but he is the right candidate for our time. There's no comparison when we put him next to Donald Trump. And we saw the last 4 years what this administration had the opportunity to do. And at every turn, they relentlessly attacked our healthcare and our children's future. But this isn't an election against Donald Trump as it is for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I was fortunate enough to work very closely with the campaign, to give some input into their plans. And I really do. I believe in this. I believe so much in this campaign. I believe in Joe Biden. Like us, he has been a caregiver. He has spent his fair share of time in the hospital, as aforementioned. Most people already know his story. He lost his first wife and daughter and two sons were in a tragic car accident. And he was at his son's bedside for, many, many months. And so he understands what that's like. His son, Bo, who died of cancer, he understands that grief. He understands the importance of healthcare. This is something that's extremely personal to him. He has, met with our families and talked about how personal this is. And so I just, I trust him. I trust him to understand the importance of healthcare. I trust him to understand what this means for our families to balance healthcare and caregiving and work and fighting for our kids' future. So we were thrilled to endorse him, thrilled to endorse Kamala Harris, who during the primary was the very first candidate to put out a disability plan. And, I feel very hopeful, truly, truly hopeful that a Biden-Harris administration will allow us to have a good night's rest, something we've been desperately missing the last 4 years.
Indeed. So how can our listeners help what Little Lobbyists is doing, help spread the message, and help your organization, or join if they are?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been sharing the story of a Little Lobbyist child every single day. And so it's all over our social media. So please visit our social media at Little Lobbyists on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and help us share these stories, get to know our children. We're giving everybody a reason to vote for healthcare every single day, a different reason to vote every single day. So that's number one. I think the stories are really powerful. It helps us remind what the issues really are about. We hear about the statistics, 135 million people with pre-existing conditions. I can't bring you 135 million people, but I can bring you a Little Lobbyist child every single day for you to get to know them and see what is possible with access to healthcare and what is at stake without it. So number one, help us share our stories. Number two, get involved in the election, not just in helping elect Biden and Harris, but also down ballot. Look to see, the elections that are happening in your state and at the local level, and help us take back the Senate, help us keep our control in the House so that we can not just defend healthcare, but expand healthcare for our children and for all Americans. So there are many ways to get involved. You can host virtual events for your families. You can text bank. You can phone bank. You can write postcards. I think, it's a couple more days left to do that, get it out in the mail. You can help donate. You can really just help by spreading the word, helping your friends and family make a plan to vote, whether it's in person, whether it's mail-in ballots. And helping educate your community is really the best way to do so. And all of that information can be found on the Joe Biden website, as well as on littlelobbyists.org.
Excellent. And we will put those links up on our website with the episode. So I hope people will check those out. Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talk about?
I'm so thrilled to have this opportunity to just talk about what we do. It's really, it's real. It's real. I tell people I had a life before this. This was not something that I set out to do, but it's so important. And I realized that this is, something I had to continue to speak up on. It's not just about healthcare. That's what got me in the fight, is to fight for healthcare. But in 2017, my daughter started school, and it made me realize, well, healthcare means a lot, but I want her to have a chance to go to school and get an education. So I'm fighting for her rights as a disabled student to have the proper education. And then I met a lot of disabled adults, and I'm like, oh, right, she's going to grow up. That's the whole point of this, is to grow up. And I want to make sure that there's a future that's waiting for her, that's going to accept her, that's inclusive and accessible. And so this isn't just about healthcare and education and community inclusion and all of the other issues that are so dear to us, but it's really about fighting for quality of life. And so when we think about that in terms of the election, in terms of what we're fighting for, it really is a fight that doesn't end. I encourage all of us to find that one thing that means something to us and just to keep fighting for it.
Yeah. Elena, thank you so much for speaking with me today. And thank you so much for all of the activism that you're doing. It is so important and so needed, but also so lovely. I love seeing the stories of these kids. I think, like the way you said the joy, it's incredible. And so thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate you helping us share a message, which is really the whole point of this. I can speak forever, but if it's not getting out there, then it really doesn't mean as much. So I appreciate you. And I thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening, off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at twobroadstalk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.